I think it's very unfair and very premature to talk about numbers now. Don't forget that the list that was published today is a draft.
It is a draft that leaves 4 million people off it, and 4 million people who think they may eventually be deported.
No, not necessarily. They have a right to appeal. They will appeal right now after this with the necessary documentation. Don't forget that there is a cut-off date of 24th of March 1971. And if you are able to prove that on the 24th of March or before 1971, you or your ancestors were resident there, then you can.
Well, I'll come back to that point of proof in a moment, but families already who are not on this list, they have been split up. Others fear that they will be deported or put into detention centres. What can you say to all of those people who now, as we sit here talking, fear that is going to be the consequence for them?
Well, Matthew, I'd like to reassure them nothing of that sort is going to happen. There is a process, it's the due process of law. Nobody...
But the process has started and 4 million people's names are not on this list.
Nobody is going to be put in a detention camp, and they have a right to appeal. That appeal will be heard. It's going to be a due process monitored by the Supreme Court of India and not by the government of India.
You talk about process. That process already started with people having to put in documentation for this list to actually be drawn up. Now, 4 million names are not on it, and those people have already gone through part of the process. So they're not going to be reassured by what you're saying.
No, but can I tell you that in December last year, 31st December 2017, 19 million names were published, and for this process between May and August 2015, 32.9 million people registered, applied, and documentation of 66.3 million
that still leaves 4 million, which is what we're talking about. And I know what you're saying about at the start of the process, and it may be a different figure at the end. I understand that, but human rights groups are saying that given the nature of the way the paperwork has been kept, it may be impossible to actually prove you were there before this cut-off date.
Not necessarily, because if you were there before, you would have some documentation, and that documentation would be examined. Plus, don't forget that even when the final list is published, the National Register of Citizens, there is yet another appeal with the Foreigners Tribunal. So that's important. There is in every stage an appeal process.
Sure, well, you're asking for paperwork from 40 years ago across a state where there may be some, there may not be some. In many cases, many people are saying this is deliberately targeted at Muslims. What do you say to that allegation?
I absolutely deny that. I don't think that's correct at all. I mean, it is a question of people who came after 1971, who are illegal foreigners. After all, in which country do you accept illegal foreigners as citizens? You have to prove that you were there. There is a cut-off date. There is a history behind it. You're aware of the agitation.
You talk about history. Let me just read you an extract from a UN letter sent to your Foreign Secretary in the last month. We'd like to express serious concern that members of the Bengali Muslim minority in Assam have experienced discrimination in access and enjoyment of citizenship status on the basis of their ethnic and religious minority status. That is the concern from the United Nations.
A completely misplaced, misconceived and ill-informed concern, I may say.
So absolutely nothing in that. 4 rapporteurs who've looked at this and the build-up to this, they express concerns like that, and you dismiss it as saying there's nothing in this at all.
Well, I didn't say there's nothing. I said if they have concerns, those concerns will be appropriately addressed. But I think to form judgments sitting somewhere else without really knowing the full facts of the case, I think is not correct, not fair.
You say that this is not targeted at Muslims. Now, Narendra Modi has never been shy of expressing his preference of Hindu Bangladesh migrants who should actually be embraced by India. Alternatively, others he's called infiltrators who would be deported. That's what he said to a crowd in 2014.
Well,
are you sure that this is not targeted at one particular group?
I'm absolutely sure that it's not targeted against any particular group. It's targeted against illegal foreigners.
But why is he happy to embrace Hindu Bangladeshi migrants?
But I haven't seen what he said at that time. But if he's talking about Hindus and minorities, not just Hindus, from other countries in the neighbourhood, that is an entirely different question and is not really covered by this.
Do you accept that this has the potential, anyway, and I know we're at the start of the process, you've been very clear about that, but it has the potential to have echoes, to replicate the Rohingya Muslim crisis in Myanmar, with a whole group forced out of a country, with the country, Bangladesh, not willing to actually accept them. This has got echoes of that, and there's the potential of actually leaving people stateless yet again.
I don't think so, simply because, one, we are in a constant dialogue with the government of Bangladesh on this issue.
But they don't want these people back. They've said that. They've made that clear.
We are not pushing them back, are we, right now? We are going
right now
to determine.
Is the clause there, though, isn't it?
But there are other solutions. Why can't we do it? I'm not going to speculate on the solutions. But
if they go through this process and there's no documentation and they are deemed illegal immigrants, the plan is it not, to send them back? Well, and Bangladesh has already said we're not going to take them back.
Well,
so what happens to
that's what I said, that we are going to do it with a constant dialogue with the government of Bangladesh, if at all.
But they've made their position clear.
Well, there's a dialogue that is ongoing, so I think we haven't even reached a conclusion yet. So these numbers that are being bandied about, I think, are not correct, really.
And in no circumstances will these people become stateless?
Well, I cannot say anything at this stage. If they're illegals and proved to be illegal foreigners, the due process of law in a democracy in India will be followed. The Supreme Court of India is directly monitoring this, so I wouldn't have fears that that is being expressed by you and others. So I think let's wait. This is a draft, as I said initially. Let's wait and see what the outcome is, what the due process of law leads to. I don't think we should jump to conclusions.